Former President Trump ramped up his attacks on Vice President Harris this week. Take a listen to Trump speaking at a rally earlier this week.
Meanwhile, the radical left Democrat Party is divided in chaos and having a full-scale breakdown, all because they can't decide which of their candidates is more unfit to be president, sleepy, crooked Joe Biden or laughing Kamala. Laughing Kamala.
And he threw a few more jabs at the Vice President on Fox.
I think she's an ineffective person. She was in charge of the border. She's never been there. She didn't do a good job, and she hasn't done a job on a lot of things. But it would seem to me that from a political standpoint, that's who they're going with. They're not even talking about alternatives.
So the Vice President, for her part, fired back with some harsh words of her own. That happened at a rally in Dallas. Let's watch.
Consider, Donald Trump has openly vowed, if re-elected, he'll be a dictator on day one. That he will weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies, round up peaceful protesters and throw them out of our country, and even, and I quote, terminate the United States Constitution.
The Vice President did not leave it there. At another rally in Las Vegas, she attacked Trump over Project 2025. That, of course, is the proposed plan drafted by Trump allies at the Heritage Foundation, outlining a dramatic expansion of executive power. Harris tweeted a link to the clip you're about to see with this caption: "Donald Trump wants to turn our democracy into a dictatorship." Let's have a look.
What's more, Trump's advisors have created a 900-page blueprint they're calling Project 2025, detailing everything else they plan to do in a second term.
Now, Trump has since tried to distance himself from that Project 2025, claiming he has no idea, as he puts it, who is behind the plan.
Meanwhile, the Biden-Harris campaign is quietly testing the strength of Harris against Trump by surveying voters, according to new reporting by the New York Times. Thus far, public polls show mixed results as to whether Harris would outperform Biden against Trump. The vice president having to justify the ability to step in for president in the middle of a campaign, right? This reminds me so much of the McCain, Palin, where it was it's a heartbeat away from the presidency. Like, typically a vice president is not supposed to be the focus of an incumbency campaign. You want the president to be doing that. Kamala Harris, as vice president, is doing what most would do, which is taking the attack, right? She's doing the attack on Trump because the top of the ticket right now is in such a disarray.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And of course, people are legitimately wondering, in November, is it going to be a choice between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, or is it going to be a choice between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump? And that's understandable then why she is getting out there and making these attacks. I do think that she has performed a little bit better as a campaigner recently. She got off to a very uncertain start in her vice presidency. There was a very bad interview as part of a trip to Latin America. That's the one she did go to the border, right, and where she said, "Don't come here," right, which is, I think, what a lot of people want a leader to say. But for the left, "Don't come here," it came out as an anti-immigrant thing. Well, and there was also, I can't remember the precise clip, but I think it was Lester Holt asked her why she hadn't gone to the border herself. And it was a completely obvious question that she would be asked. And the response that came out was very, very defensive. Look, we do have to say there are lots of questions about Kamala Harris, generally speaking. I remember ages ago, a figure in California Democratic politics saying to me, she always looks great on paper and she's always underwhelming in the end. And, you look back at her 2020 campaign, it was not successful. Her stint as vice president has been mixed at best. Her ratings are not that much better than Biden's. What has changed is, I think, Biden's perception of winning or the perception of his possibility of winning the election has fallen, which doesn't make Kamala Harris an amazing candidate. It just makes her better by comparison. Well, and you look at the tight timeline to formalize the ticket, which is, in theory, with an incumbent,
you shouldn't even be worrying about that right now. Right now, all you should be doing is raising money and knocking on doors and getting people to be enthusiastic. So at this point, there is a sense of the ticket is still being figured out at some level when really nothing technically has changed other than how we talk about it. But for her to have to run again when she doesn't have the loyalists that Biden does, right? There's absolutely the K-hive online. There's the idea of what she represents, the fact that she's a prosecutor. She knows how to, have those hard conversations, but she does not have that inner circle that has served her for decades or that could advise her. In fact, she infamously rotates through staff. So there is a sense that even within the Democratic Party of the strategists and the folks who are active on the ground, she's operating and stuck alone.
Yeah, I mean, the argument also that she's a prosecutor and therefore she knows how to have the tough conversations. I mean, that's clearly not how the left sees it, right? I mean, it's the
Kamala the cop.
Kamala the cop thing. And so they are, I think there are, real concerns on the left about her. Now, it's interesting that this year, that hasn't yet come to the surface quite so much, but I think it would do if she were to become the nominee. The Kamala the cop thing, I think, is a broader concern about authenticity. And I know sometimes those kind of charges can be gendered, or women of colour can be judged more harshly. But when Harris ran in 2020, what did she believe? What ideological position in the Democratic Party was she trying to fill? It wasn't really clear what that was, in a way that, to be fair, it was for then candidate Biden, and it was for people on the left. I think there are legitimate questions about Harris in that respect.
Well, and then also the fact that this was all decided 18 months ago or so, and this brings into question the entire primary process, where there were technically opportunities for people to step forward. They did not. They're like, well, the economy is going great. Biden looks strong, until suddenly Biden doesn't look strong. Then what do you do? And the idea that the voters already had their say, 14 million people voted in the primaries. Well, by the time the primaries came to me or you, it didn't matter anymore, right? Everything just kind of gets decided by who goes first, the first couple of things. And this was the debate, I think, struck people so much in their minds because it was the first time we saw the two actual people on the ticket who were running for president talk to each other in that way, right? Trump was not in the Republican primaries. You can say that all other people got their vote, but there was never a toe-to-toe anywhere until this moment. And not reckoning with that is going to do far more damage to Democrats long-term. And this idea that Biden is now saying everybody needs to be quiet, everyone needs to stop saying things. What are the threats? What are they going to do? I mean, nobody believes that Biden has a whole row of thugs that are going to go mafia style on folks who disagree. And the Democrats are traditionally the party that welcomes the diversity of opinion and thought. And this is what you get. This is a diversity of opinion and thought.
Right, but I mean, I think that the issue about the primaries is, people thought they were getting the 2020 version of Joe Biden again. And it seemed like, well, it's a kind of 50-50 election. It's going to be close. Biden might well pull it out. He has some things to run on, and he's running against Trump. And that's why I think the debate was so important, because it just changed that completely. Joe Biden now is clearly less than a 50-50 shot to win the presidency. Democrats consider the possibility of a second Trump term an absolutely cataclysmic disaster. Therefore, we may as well roll the dice, I think, is the Democratic view, on someone like Kamala Harris, who has her weaknesses, but that is better, I think Democrats feel, than simply sort of strolling off the cliff.
Well, it's fascinating, because I think you and I are probably the only ones speaking about Kamala Harris as the obvious next choice because she's on the ticket and we know logistically what goes into it. But many of the people calling for Biden to step aside, George Clooney, former Obama speechwriters, former Obama strategists, right, happen to be white men as well, are not saying that it should be Kamala Harris. They're actually not talking about what comes next at all. And I don't think they recognize what that, pulling off the lid is going to do to the party, particularly a party that right now is not willing to recognize the rising majority, who the base of the party is, and that it's cannot continue to be a gerontocracy, right? The idea that old that as you age, you get more power because you are owed that power. That seems to be the dominant argument. Even James Clyburn, a senior black activist, leader in the Democrats in Congress, his argument effectively is Biden deserves this. He's earned it, right? But, not an argument about capability or skill or ideas.
But if it's not Biden, isn't Kamala Harris's argument a version of that she deserves it or she's entitled to it?
That she served, right? That she served, and that she, of all the other names out there in theory right now, she's the only one who's been on the primary ballot. That technically people voted for her already to be the second on the ticket, and heartbeat away from the presidency. That's what you're getting with the second on the ticket. So, right, this is.
It's not a completely persuasive argument, though.
No, I don't think any of this is persuasive. And the fact that at the end of the day, Democrats are stuck with this is a binary choice between some Democrat and Trump is so bad, again, is not motivation enough to participate if you already are feeling that this is all just broken and a hot mess.
More broken politics and other things coming up after this.